must sit down.
This meeting is being
and taste my
recorded.
meat. So I did sit and eat. Welcome. And we start our worship this morning with the passing of the peace. So I invite everybody to get up and pass the peace to those around you. The last word. Eat. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Ed. Hi, Marcia. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ruth. Who else is here? Sorry, Marcia, Ed.
I think we did, but you know, we can do it again. That's okay.
All right. And now I invite you to join Rise in Body and Spirit and join me in the opening hymn, number 290, Spirit of God, Descend Upon My Heart. 290.
Spirit of God, descend upon my heart. Breathe it from earth, through all its pulses move. Stoop to my weakness, mighty as you are. And make me love you as I ought to love. I ask no dream, no prophet ecstasies, no sudden rending of the veil of clay, no angel visit, tend to opening skies, but take the dimness
Our first reading this morning is from the book of Ecclesiastes. And it's chapter 1, verses 12 through 14, and then chapter 2, verses 18 to 23. Book of Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I, the teacher, when king over Israel and Jerusalem, applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see, all is vanity and a chasing of wind. I hated all my toil, in which I had toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to those who come after me. And who knows whether they will be wise or foolish? Yet they will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned and gave my heart up to despair concerning all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes one who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave all to be enjoyed by another who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What do mortals get from all the toil and strain with which they toil under the sun? For all their days are full of pain, and their work is a vexation. Even at night, their minds do not rest. This also is vanity. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. And our gospel reading this morning is from the book of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. Someone in the crowd came up to Jesus and said, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." And Jesus said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge and arbiter over you?" And the man said, and Jesus said further, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grains and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. And so I wanted to start this morning by looking at the word vanity, because there's two meanings to the word that are, they're interrelated, but they're also a little bit contradictory. So we're going to kind of take a deep dive into vanity. So there's the kind of vanity of appearance and ego, right? There's the kind of vanity that we as human beings often fall into, where we believe that what we look like, the appearance that we're giving, is somehow more important than what we're actually doing in the world, you know, and that we put an awful lot of value on looking good. And you see this right in the gospel reading with the man who builds the storehouses. I mean, he has all of this grain. He doesn't really need to buy storehouses, because what could he do? He could give away the excess grain. He could find a way, instead of being miserly with his goods, his resources, he could find a way instead to be generous. But the things that stand in his way are his need to look good, his need to look rich, to look like he's been blessed in some extraordinary way that other people have not. When really the real blessing that he could show would be to bless others with his riches, with his resources. And vanity stands in the way of that. And so that's the first definition of vanity. In that first definition, he's very much displaying that first definition of vanity, caring a lot about what you look like to the detriment of how you treat people or how you are in the world. And then sneakily comes in the second definition of vanity. And that second definition is about futility. I toyed with a lot of sort of jokey titles for this sermon before I got "You So Vain You Think This Sermon's About You." One of those titles was taking a nod to the Borg from Star Trek Next Generation and saying that resistance is vanity. Because vanity is about futility, that no matter how hard we hustle, no matter how hard we strive, that we could still fail miserably. That in the grand scheme of things, what we do as individuals maybe doesn't really make much of a difference overall. And the setbacks that we encounter as we're struggling, that those are setbacks that are universal. They're happening to a lot of us, not just us. And when we're acting vainly, we act in the spirit of, this is happening to us, this is miserable, it has something to do with my spirit, something to do with my relationship with God, and not about the relationship that God has with creation, with all that is. We lose sight of that because we become so narrowly focused, maybe in our own experience, in our own pain, in our own fear. Because why is it that man stores up all of that grain instead of giving it away? Why does he do that? Because he's scared. He's scared that next season there will be a drought. He's scared that maybe that things won't produce that well again. And so he holds on to what he has, desperately clinging, even though it's obvious that he has abundance. There's abundance present. And in vanity, both in wanting to look good and vanity in terms of thinking that you as an individual are somehow greater than or an exception to universal rules, that in that pursuit, we lose sight of faith, we lose sight of our relationship with God. Because what God tells us is that we have enough already. All the time, God comes back to us in our moments where we feel lack, in our moments when we feel lost or isolated. God returns to us and says, no, you have love. You are abundant in love. You are abundant in spirit. If you believe that you are, if you let go of those fears, the fear of lack, the fear of want, the fear of death, when you let go of those fears, you are able to see what you have in abundance and live in that. And that leads to a more faithful life, to a life where you are following more closely with God, who tells us that by our very nature, we are enough, we have enough. We need to share that with other people in order for more to be created. Abundance begets abundance. Lack begets lack. Vanity begets vanity. And I see the character in Ecclesiastes, the teacher in Ecclesiastes. I think that it's a mindset that I think all of us, particularly like past a certain age, that it's easier for us to identify with the sense of futility, the kind of It's all ridiculous. It's all absurd. There's no point to any of it. You know, I really like the teacher in Ecclesiastes reminds me of Pangloss from Voltaire's Candide, or of like George Carlin. You know, like it's someone who's seen everything and nothing is too impressive, really. It's not impressive. And that the things that are impressive, the things that are meaningful, are those small moments, are the thing, like the things that are rich are actually the things that cost nothing at all. You know, the times that are meaningful are not the times where we feel our ego being built up. They're not the times when we are being great. There are the times when we are displaying great love, when we are humble enough to understand that creation is a complex mess and that only God can see and understand all of that complexity. Simone Weil, this person who I read from this morning, I feel like she's a really good example of countering vanity as a spiritual practice, and the relationship that you develop with God when you do that to a really kind of extreme degree, like she did. So Simone Weil, she was born in 1909, and so she lived through the early 20th century and all of the turmoil that was happening to humanity at that point. Her response to that was first to become very political. She became a Marxist, and she left a comfortable middle-class lifestyle to go work in factories, to be among the people, the lowest people, so to speak. And the experience that she learned from that, from giving up all that was comfortable to her and putting herself into some place that was uncomfortable, the experience that she learned from that was that the thing that she was looking for was not a material possession. It was not something that was present in this world of human striving, that the thing that she was really striving for, and that she felt that all of us were striving for ultimately, was love, and that love was God. One of the theologians who has studied Simone Weil, Leslie Fielder, said, "To those who consider themselves on the safe side of belief, she teaches an uncomfortable truth, that the unbelief of many atheists is closer to a true love of God and a true sense of God's nature than the easy kind of faith which, never having experienced God, hangs a label bearing his name on some childish fantasy or projection of ego." So let me say that again. So Simone Weil is challenging with her kind of like, she had a pretty hardcore faith. You know, it takes a hardcore faith to give up everything you know and to take on a life of toil and trial and pain purposefully to learn something as a human being. You know, and the learning about when you lack everything, what you actually have left is enough. That once we are stripped of ego, once we are stripped of everything that makes us feel proud and puffed up and like we're doing something powerful, once we have had to let go of all of that, what's left is powerful truth and a relationship of abundance with the source of creation, with God, and looking at that in a plain way, in a rational way, of what does it look like to bring faith into practice in the world. And she was famous for saying that it was easier for a non-Christian to become a Christian than for a Christian to become one. That's what she said. So it was easier for a non-Christian to become a Christian than for a Christian to become one. And that's interesting, right? And that does have to do with vanity, that a lot of us who are raised Christian, who come from Christianity, that a lot of the time we can carry around a holiness that we think that we have, that isn't, maybe we're not actually as holy as we think we are, And then when life comes along and challenges us and says, you are not as holy as you think you are, that is correct. That those experiences, they can challenge our spiritual paradigms. They can challenge what we know about our own relationship with God, our relationship with grace, and our relationship with abundance. How could we be bad, we ask? We're living with God, or at least we think we are. And it causes this moment of there are times when we have these dramatic reassessments, when we realize that maybe that we have not been living in a life of faith, that we have in fact been living in a life of vanity. And that these two things can sometimes look alike. So Simone Weil, she believed that her job as a Christian was to act as a neutral medium like water, that to be truly with the body of Christ in both the bodily sense and the idealistic sense, that a Christian becomes indifferent to all ideas. And it's without the exception of even atheism and materialism. And what I think she means by that, indifferent, she doesn't mean that you're just like, oh, it's fine, whatever, these ideas, they don't matter. It's more that you have to be willing to consider that you might be carrying some materialism around with you and you don't know it. Or that you might be acting in ideologies or in ways of being that you would be counter to if you were really aware that that was happening. And what I believe that Simone Weil does is that she offers a model of faith where she stripped away everything extra. She stripped away all of the things that would somehow make her better than anyone else, because she was searching, desperately searching and grasping for the truth and the love of God, of the all that is and that makes all of us. I want to read the reading that I started with today. I want to read it again because I think that it's such a powerful and reassuring testament to God's consistency and patience and love, and that God is love. Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of lust and sin. But quick-eyed love, observing me grow slack, from my entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. A guest, I answered, worthy to be here. Love said, you shall be that guest. I, the unkind, ungraceful? Ah, my dear, I cannot look on thee. Love took my hand and smiling did reply, who made your eyes but I? Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve. And know you not, says love, who bore the blame? My dear, then I will serve. You must sit down, says love, and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat. When we are acting in vanity, either definition or both at once, as seems to occur. We are ignoring what God has to offer: the love, the meal, the welcome that God hands us at every moment, that is present for us whenever we accept that we are welcome to that love. When we are able not just to let go of the vanity that makes us feel great, but also the vanity, the stories, the things that we tell ourselves about our reputation or our life that make us feel like we are not allowed, that we are not good enough to receive God's love. We are, each as individuals, just by our being, we are worthy of that love. And God tells us that time and time again. And there is no need to be vain. There is no need to puff ourselves up and be more than we are. There is no need to fake it until we make it. We are already there. We are already loved. And we are able then to bring that love to everyone, to spread the love, to make it a thing that catches on like COVID. Yeah, right? It would be good if love catched on like COVID. That would be all right. Yeah, it's definitely easier to do. Yeah, no masks involved. But yeah, God, that love is present, and that we just need to touch it, to get to it. And that requires us to let go of all of the things that we think make up who we are, all of the ideas that we have about what the world is, what society is, and just be present with love. Be present with love, because love is always present with you and with us and with all of creation. May it be so. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. And now you can stay seated as we sing our reflection hymn. It's going to be number 286, Spirit, Spirit of Gentleness. We're going to sing verses 1 and 4. want to give all of you a chance to step up here to the mic and share any reflections or thoughts or ideas about our sermon today. About our sermon. So if you want to come up and say something about what you learned today or what you're thinking about, all righty.
I think the word holy means confident and secure. I learned that, I figured that out. I'm gonna realize that or something like that. They're not so long. And learned that men are the fishermen and women are the fish, and the fishermen are in love with the fish, and the fish are in love with the bait. That's why marriage is such a complex thing. Does it make any sense to you? The men are the fishermen and the women are the fish. Men love the fish and the women are in love with the bait. In love with the bait, yeah. Like they're in love with the bait. Like, but men love. See, it takes a man a while to get married to a girl. You know, it's not something.
Do you have anything that kind of related to the sermon today that you want to share?
Oh no, I don't. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
sharing. Well, I think
It just takes a little while sometimes.
sometimes
So, of course, we can't go through this sermon without talking about Edie's book, Way of Abundance. And I've been thinking about the abundance in my life, which is at my house. And I think about refugee families with 11 children and Hans and me in this somewhat big house with 2, and how we have abundance that we're not sharing in that vein, you know. It's just, and it's a hard one because we really like living there. One of the things I liked in Edie's book a lot was the story of the man who comes to God, and I mean Jesus, and says, "Oh, you know, I've done everything," that he lists. And he says, "Well, you have to give away everything you have." And he goes away disappointed in that response, right? And Edie goes, "It doesn't stop there. Maybe he went home and he thought about it. And he said, you know, I don't really need this. And I gave it away," or he changed his life. So he wouldn't even have the abundance to start with because he paid so well. I mean, I'm throwing that in from your sermon. And then that was really hopeful for me. Like, it's not like, okay, you didn't do it already, so it's all over. And the stories in the Bible where they seem like they end, they might go on. I thought that was really cool. I saw on Facebook this week, if you fit in, you turn invisible. And I really like that too. And I think it's somehow relevant here, although I won't go on into why. And then the last thing is, I used to have the most amazing hair. I didn't really think about that until it fell out. But presenting, talk about vanity. There's nothing left when you don't have any hair left, I'm telling you, but you have to deal. And of course, many of us have something that causes that thinking about themselves. So I think that the whole vanity thing, if we think about our lives, we've already dealt with that to some extent, and we can learn from it.
Okay, thank you, Aiden, for another really thought-provoking sermon. I thought of the 2 things came to mind. First of all, the idea of vanity keeping us from really being a Christian. Yeah, I think it really can get in the way, and not always in the way we expect. And I think kind of the catch-22 though with that is it's really easy to look at least for me, to look at some other people that I know, and I'm not talking about anybody here. So I'm talking about people that I know outside of church, and say, "Oh, those people go to church every week, but in which am judging them for their vanity as a Christian, but that like totally puts me in the same place. So I think that's a great reminder. And I also like the flip side of it, of that we don't need that we're still enough. And, that's the other struggle. I think a lot of people have both of those struggles, and either at the same time or flip-flopping back and forth between the two. So thank you for that.
Oh, sure. Oh, I was going to add a comment.
Please.
But now I'm trying to remember what it was. Yes, we do flip flop back and forth between I'm the greatest thing that ever happened and I am nothing good at all and nothing good will ever come. Right, or like, yeah, most people are foolish and idiots and I can't trust them, and I'm also a foolish idiot and I can't trust myself. It's one of those things that we definitely struggle with for sure. Come on.
Taking it from let me get here. Taking it from another level, maybe. I just recall when you get really bad news, whatever that news is, death or disease, for yourself or for a loved one. And I've always had the moment there, and it's always a curious thing. I mean, it's horrible to get that news, and your mind goes a thousand places at once. But a lot of times when you're fixed in that moment, you can remember something about that moment. I remember sitting here, consumed with grief for a situation that eventually worked out, but just feeling the smoothness of the wood and just like gripping onto that wood for dear life, because that is all I felt like I had in that moment. And I guess, as strange as that sounds, I have that, or perhaps sounds, I have that moment where, I needed something. Everything that I had was not going to change the outcome of this terrible news. and I have a frog in my throat, not anything else. But I think that's part of when you pare something down to that element where you are just yourself and you have nothing else. You think you have the love of God, but it's where you have all that other noise where you think, wow, I can control all of this, and aren't I doing well? Or, everybody is doing well. So I always think of that moment as being sacred, because it takes me back. And when I've had other things happen, it just goes back to the wood. So it's just a memory that is just very powerful for me. So thank you.
I was also, there was one thought that I had this morning that I also wanted to share with you all as a congregation. And that is that you have definitely in the past few years, as you've given the building away to Julio de Burgos, I really have seen you live in the spirit of Jesus in Luke's reading today, what he calls us to do with our riches, with our resources, with our abundance. You have definitely done that. Which is why I say you're not just seeking to act in the spirit of the Christ during the welcome. I say that you are acting in the spirit of Christ, because time and time again, I've seen all of you as a congregation do that, and act in that spirit minus the vanity, even though this is a 200-year-old congregation. That legacy is carried on by giving away what you have. And I think it's so beautiful. So I wanted to share that with you all, but that's what I've seen. So cool. Yeah, you look great for 200. Jeez. Another century or so. It's going to be beautiful. Yeah, come on.
I just want to say what everybody knows, but I just thought I'd say it in the context of the sermon. Thank you, Aiden. You know that God's love is tons, but we still need food and shelter and things like that. And those things are not vanity, and of course. And so, but God gives us those things. And it's up to us to share, as we just illustrated with the gift of the building. And so, you know, to distinguish between the shorthand could be our needs and our wants and the things that God has given us to share with everybody, and make sure that that happens, so that in fact they can become the person they were created to be, including the loving person of God who, you know, is love.
Thank you, everyone, for your reflections. As always, it's so amazing to hear from you. Now we're going to move forward with our offering. So we'll give our offering for the good work of this church. Thanks for the offering.
Praise God, the source of life and birth. Praise God, the Word who came to earth. Praise God, the Spirit, holy flame. All glory, honor to God's name.
Please be seated. As we enter into our time of prayer, I invite you to sing with me our invitation to prayer, which we'll sing together twice. Our prayers together today, we will answer each prayer with God hears our prayers. I invite you up to share a prayer.
I pray again today for someone in the wider life of the United Church of Christ, a retired conference minister named Alan Miller, who used to lead one of our conferences in Pennsylvania, who is dying after a long struggle with encephalitis and cancer. His time is very near. So for thanks for his ministry and for comfort for his family, God hear our prayers.
I ask for continued prayers for my niece Autumn as she is counting down to her last couple sessions of chemo, and she's continues to do well. Prayers for, I just got a text from Marcia Perry or a message during the service. And she said her dog Lucky is home. He may have to have, and he's adjusting well, but she said he may have to have additional surgery. So prayers for Marcia with her own health struggles with her cancer, and for Lucky to continue to get better, because she's very dependent on his love and companionship. I also wanted to ask for prayers for one of my students who lost her father this week. This is a student that I mentioned last year during the school year. The dad had cancer. Kathy had asked me about it before. So unfortunately, her father passed away. Her father was her custodial parent, and she was his caregiver. And this is a girl that's just going into 8th grade. So prayers for her, and also prayers for one of my coworkers whose father, I believe, also had cancer, and also got a message yesterday or the day before that he passed away. So prayers for all of those people. God hear our prayers.
I want to lift up everybody who is struggling with the effects of climate change. And, we just these recent floods in Kentucky, the fires going on in various places, people in other countries, that are in low-lying places are being flooded or experiencing high heat when they're not equipped to really deal with it. We're clearly seeing the impact of our failure to act decades ago when we knew about the problem. And I got to say, I struggle with thinking, it serves you right kind of thing, for policymakers and all the, the folks that denied it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is not a good attitude. I realize. And so, because of course the people being hurt, for the most part, are not the people who polluted all the carbon. And they're certainly not the people who made the decisions not to do anything about it. Anyway, to me, in my mind, in my heart, it's a big mixed up thing. But I certainly want to lift up the people that are suffering and pray for our policymakers in this country and around the world that action may be taken. Looks like maybe here some initial steps are going to happen. Ongoing steps are going to happen. Anyway, that we can somehow, as a species, wake up to the damage that we're doing to ourselves and to so many other species. And out of gratitude for all we've been given, become much better stewards of this planet. May God hear our prayers.
And I want to add one last prayer, a prayer for clarity and against vanity, that those with the most power and resources, that they will have their eyes and hearts opened to the reality that if we do not act in abundance now, we will lose everything. And may we find a way to collectively communicate that to those with the most power. And may we all, as individuals or as a community, join together to do what we can with our own resources and abundance to change the tide back toward life. To this I say, God hears our prayers. And now I invite you to join me in the prayer that Jesus taught us. Our Father, Mother, who are in heaven, hallowed be their name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And now I invite you to join me in the prayer with persons in recovery. Our Mother, Father, within and among us, abundant are your forms. May new day come, our spirits one with earth as yours is among us. Give us this day our daily abstinence, and forgive us our relapses as we forgive ourselves, one day at a time. And lead us not into temptation, but help us walk our paths, for ours is the earth to tend and cherish, in power and spirit, forever. Blessed be. Amen. Amen. And I'm going to hand it over to Hans and Jacob for our special music.
Archwood UCC was a little more than 30 years already in operation when the piece you're about to hear was written. Jacob brings us from Robert Schumann from 1853, an excerpt from Gesänge der Frühe, which means songs of the morning.
see the dawn. You know, the sound of it just very redolent. As we conclude our worship service today, are there any announcements for the good of the community?
Since about March, we've been waiting for a new side door, which was vandalized and break-in and really had needed to be changed out for a long time, including the stone underneath it, which is kind of cool. Well, was kind of cool. And also the whole stoop will be, anyway, due to supply chain issues, we're still waiting for it. And now due to labor issues, we have to wait till September, but it looks like September is the time. It has come in, it will get painted by frost and then put in frost new stone, and it's coming, as I have been saying for a long time.
Thanks, Kathy. That's always good to hear. Just a couple, governing body meeting after church. And also next week is a produce sale. Oh, isn't it next week? Oh, this is an extra week month. Thank you guys. I appreciate that, because I was thinking it was. So, well then, yeah, so then I guess I only had one announcement. So, all right, thank you.
I invite you to rise in body and spirit and join me in our closing hymn, number 81, God Be With You. Be with God and carry God with you, that love out into the world, acting in the Spirit of God. Amen.
Amen.